they got 2 batting cages underneath there, and so my dad will be in one throwing to me, and then he's in the other just throwing a bucket of balls at the back of the net to get everything going so that when it's his turn to throw, he's ready. I remember one time in high school, I made 2 errors in a game, and next day at practice, we had a big old shopping cart full of balls, and he had me go out to early practice, and he had his fungo and just hit me just rockets after rockets on our old high school field, and it was just bumpy. I'm taking balls off the chest. He's getting upset, getting angry at me, and that was, I don't think I made 2 errors in a game in front of him after that. Flip it around like that.
You expect, I guess, when you get 85.
Yeah.
Lovely.
All right, see if you can bring it in just like old times.
At control. And on the mound, the Deacon, Vernon Law, who goes after game number 3 and the one that'll do it for the Pirates.
Last night, it's cold. Pirates best pitcher beat them, and so, you know.
Ty Isaac, the tailback now. Rudock fake to him, takes off running, has
Nobody has a quarterback. You know, a lot of people don't know I hit .333 in the World Series.
Vernon Law may look like an ordinary man, but his life is anything but ordinary.
Which was, matter of fact, I hit one out of the ballpark in Pittsburgh that was just foul. And so anyway, you know, I'd like to be a complete player, not one that just, you know, throws the ball. You know, I could bunt, I could hit, I could do some things to help myself win ball, because we had to hit.
Vernon Sanders Law was born on March 12, 1930, in Meridian, Idaho, to Jesse and Melba Law, the second boy in the family. Jesse Law worked as a machinist and a mechanic in this rural farm community. Vern and his 2 brothers learned to love baseball by watching their dad play on community teams.
And we used to hook up our horse and buggy, and we'd travel, you know, take 2 hours to get to where we was going to play, you know, and which was just a town next door practically.
Baseball leagues for kids did not yet exist in Idaho, so he had no coaching other than what he taught himself.
We didn't have anything in grade school at all whatsoever. Matter of fact, they wouldn't let us play hardball, you know, and so yeah, I didn't start playing hardball until we got in high school. There was no minor, there was no little league, there was nothing like that, you know, and so it was just my brother and I, and we'd play catch and that, but that was about the extent of it. You know, no coaching to speak of as far as the game of baseball or the other sports either, for that matter, but actually in high school, we had a football coach that seemed to know what he was doing, but I had no help as a pitcher. I didn't have a windup. I didn't even look like a pitcher, but living on a farm, I was always throwing rocks at birds and insulators on telephone poles, and so I had pretty good hand-eye coordination. I did develop a strong arm.
Vern also played basketball and football at Meridian High School. In fact, he had 3 college scholarship offers to play quarterback.
I could throw, I could kick, was a quarterback. My brother was the end, and you know darn good and well who got most of the passes because he had good hands.
But his baseball coach convinced him that he would have a longer career on the diamond. Plus, the girls in school thought this tall, shy boy looked great in his baseball uniform.
Now, he made mention to us that you said that he had the best legs.
Oh, I wonder why. Well, his legs were very well formed on the basketball court.
Vern and Vanita started dating in high school and never stopped.
She was popular, very popular girl in high school. She was a cheerleader. I played the trombone in high school in the band, and she was a violinist, and also played the trumpet. And she passed out the music.
Well, I'd give him his music, and I'd say, "Hi, Vernon, how are you?" So I had to ask a question, of course, and he was a little bit embarrassed, and I would every day make him say hello whether he wanted to or not.
During his junior year in a game against Payette High School, Vern was on his way to throwing a no-hitter and didn't know that a friend of Bing Crosby, the singer, and the owner of the Pittsburgh Pirates was sitting in the stands.
We was pitching the game. Nobody had scored or did much of anything, you know. I mean, it was just kind of more of a pitcher's duel than anything else. And I was getting those guys out, and whoever was pitching for them, we weren't getting many hits either. And I don't remember the sequence, but either my brother hit a double and I got a base hit to drive him in, or I hit the double and he drove me in. That was probably the way it happened. But anyway, as it turned out, why, we got a 1-0 lead in the last inning. So now they're in their last at bat, and so I go out and take my warm-up pitches, and then I come back, get on the mound, and I'll be darned, here's a midget walks up there. He's about he's about maybe 4 feet at the most. You know, he's got a uniform and a little bat, and he's up there, of course, to get a base on balls. And he was a member of the team. My brother came like, "What are we going to do?" And I said, "Well, he looks like, you know, he's up there to get a base on balls. He's not going to hit, surely, but if you'll get on your knees and put the glove right down there by your knees, by the time the ball comes over the plate, if I hit that glove, it's going to be a strike." Well, as it turned out, I threw 3 straight strikes to him and struck him out. You know, he didn't even offer to swing. He was up there to get a base on balls.
In addition to the midget, Law struck out 17 other batters. The win earned him a call to Crosby with a recommendation for the Pirates to check him out.
That impressed him, and so he called Bing and said, "Bing, you better call Pittsburgh and have a scout come out here and scout this kid. He looks like he got the stuff to pitch in the big leagues, you know." And he says, he told Bing, he said, "You better call him and have him do that because you know, you're going to lose out on a pretty good player if you don't."
On the day of high school graduation, May 20th, 1948, Vern gave Vanita a ring and asked her to marry him.
He came over to the house to pick me up to go to graduation. And I don't remember that he actually said, "Will you marry me?" or whatever. He just brought out this ring and surprised me, but I knew what it meant, and I knew that he cared for me.
The day after graduation, professional baseball scouts started knocking on his door.
Well, now, after I graduate and I go home, you know, after a little celebration, why, what happens is that here comes, there's 9 different organizations there waiting to sign me. Well, what happened was, as they would come in, each one of them would have a big cigar in their mouth. And my dad would say, "Okay, you you can come in, but please leave tobacco out. We don't allow tobacco in our house. And so, anyway, that's what went on, you know, with each one of them. Well, now Pittsburgh is the last one to come in. And so when they come in, the scout, along with Herman Welker, the lawyer, they come in, they've got a dozen roses and a box of chocolates for my mother. And so halfway through the conversation, the phone rings, and on the other end of the line is Bing Crosby. Well, my mother liked to fainted because she was such a Bing Crosby fan that she, and I will say this, Bing Crosby gave my mother some good advice. He says, don't let your son sign for a bonus because he needs to go out and know how to pitch.
Law and his older brother Evan started playing on a Class D league team in Santa Rosa, California. Then got moved to a team in Davenport, Iowa. Then a Double-A team in New Orleans. As devout members of the Mormon Church, the brothers had a clause in their contract that they did not have to play on Sundays. The coaches soon noticed that Vern played better when Vanita was in the stands. So with their blessing and encouragement, the couple ended their long-distance engagement and drove to Utah, where they were married in the Logan LDS Temple.
So Wednesday I told my boss that I would be quitting. On Thursday would be my last day, and Thursday night we drove to Logan, Utah, and we borrowed my parents' 1936 Ford, which we all six crammed into it. Vernon's mother and I and Vernon were in the front seat, and Joyce and Evan and Grandpa Law were in the back seat. And we left home about probably 4 or 5 o'clock. Anyway, we were in Logan, Utah, by midnight. And Grandpa and Grandma, they felt like they couldn't, her father was in Logan, but she didn't want to disturb him that late at night. So we parked in front of I guess it was a state building of some sort. Anyway, we parked there, and all 6 of us stayed in the car overnight, and I didn't sleep very much. I don't know if anyone else did, but the next morning we went and got our marriage license.
After 3 years pitching in the minors, Law got his break in the big leagues with the Pittsburgh Pirates.
Well, I'm pitching this day, and in come the clubhouse was Bing Crosby. He and I in there by ourselves, and he said, Vern, do you remember when you pitched, when you signed after pitching? And I said, well, yeah, I remember who was there and so forth. And he said, I want to tell you something you don't know. The Pirates went out and bought the box of cigars, and they passed it out to these scouts just before they went in the house. So they would light up and, not make too good of an impression. And so the Pirates, they played both ends. They worked it so, that they'd made sure that I got with the Pirates instead of some other ball club.
We were standing looking out into Forbes Field, the first time we had seen a big ballpark. And so that's the way we were. We had been married for about 4 months, and we got to love that old ballpark.
I was proud to do that. I was proud to, and I tried to represent the church as well as the city of Pittsburgh in a way that they could be proud too.
After 2 years in the pros, Vern informed the Pirates that he was enlisting in the Army during the Korean War.
I called the draft board, and it says you'll probably be going in at least by January, February. Well, that's when you should be going to spring training. So I thought if I went in then when 1954 came around, then I would be able to go to spring training and start getting myself back in shape again, to pitch every 4th day. So, and anyway, that was my thinking, because I'm going anyway. I might as well enlist and get going in it and get over, hopefully in those 2 years.
Vern missed 2 full seasons in the service of his country and came back to the Pirates, the last place team in the National League.
We didn't have a good team when I got back, and so I did the very best I could with what we had out there, and even though my record didn't really show how well I pitched, I remember Branch Rickey felt like I had a good year, and he sent me a $1,500 check, after the season was over. I wasn't expecting to get anything, but anyway, that's the way it turned out. But anyway, it was a struggle. The whole team struggled. We were finishing, well, there were 8 teams in the league, we was finishing 8th for, in those years.
But with some new players and a lot of practice, the Pirates began to improve, winning more games than they lost in 1958 and 59. Vern became a standout on the team as a pitcher and a batter, sharing the National League Player of the Month award with future Hall of Famer Willie McCovey. Vern also stood out because of his devout religious beliefs. Mormons don't drink, smoke, or swear. His teammates nicknamed him the Deacon.
Well, actually, they asked a question because my reputation got there before I did. And so they asked me about the church and what are some of my responsibilities and how are you going to work this out, of being a member of the church and so on and so forth. It was not a problem, not a problem for me. But you see, people in Pittsburgh, they knew what a deacon was, but they didn't know what an elder was. And so Wally Westlake, who was one of the home run hitters on our ball club when I first got there, he started calling me preacher. And I said, I really didn't like that name, I said, Wally, I don't go around preaching, I'm not here I'm here to play baseball. I don't go around preaching and telling people about, that I'm trying to convert people to the church. And so that's not my responsibility right now, but it may be later. But as it is, I do give, I'm active in the church. I do hold these offices, and I attend church as often as I possibly can. I expect to be the very best I can as living the principles that I've been taught in my life. And Wally said, well, what about if I just call you Deacon? I said, that's fine, because I held that office, years ago, but that's fine. But Wally was the one that gave me that nickname. And everybody called me that, I could be walking down the street and, hey, Deacon, or whatever. But the umpires, the players, even today, they still call me the Deacon, so I get letters. Please put Deacon under your name, if you will.
In 1960, the stars aligned for the Pirates. Players like Roberto Clemente, Bill Mazeroski, Bob Friend, Smokey Burgess, and of course, Vernon Law. During the season, Law injured his pitching arm and feared he might not play again. While speaking at an event in Salt Lake City, he approached LDS leader Marvin Ashton asking for a blessing to help him heal.
I asked him, I says, Marvin, could you get a couple of brethren and give me a blessing? Well, he did that. And I can tell you that he gave me a blessing, and I immediately started to feel that, things are going to be okay. But when I got back after that, I picked up a ball, and it actually felt different for some reason. It either felt lighter in my hand or something, and so I started throwing, and it felt pretty good. And all of a sudden I hear a snap, and I said, oh my God, what was that? And so I continued on throwing and started to feel better and better and better until I could throw without pain now. So I got to feeling more comfortable, and I felt like I could cut it loose and wouldn't be any hurt there.
When did you know that 1960 was going to be a magical year for you guys? Was there a moment that just clicked?
Well, you know, down in spring training, there was a real fan that owned a cigar store right by the hotel, and he put a sign out, 1960 World Champions. He could see that we were on the verge of winning, being good, you know, and winning something.
The Bucks are going all the way, all the way, all the way. Yes, the Bucks are going all the way this year. Yes, the Bucks are going all the way, all the way, all the way. Yes, the Bucks are going all the way this year.
The 1960 Pirates went 95-59, winning the National League pennant, their first since 1927. 8 players made the All-Star team. Law finished the season 20-9 with a 3.8 earned run average and led the National League in complete games, enough to later win him the Cy Young Award. The celebration in Pittsburgh was intense, a bit too intense for Vern Law.
After we had clinched the pennant, they were celebrating, and I happened to be the only one with the shirt on and all my clothes, and except for a tie that they cut into. You know, just celebrating like a bunch of high school kids, tearing shirts off, and so, you know. And I was the last one to have a shirt on, and so they come over to grab me, and 5 guys picked me up out of my chair, and Bob Prince might have been the instigator. I don't know. I said, "Deacon, come on. Yeah, we got to get, you know." So anyway, 5 of them picked me up. One guy grabbed a hold of my right foot and was trying to take my shoe off. And I tightened the muscles up in my leg and an ankle and so on. And I heard something pop. And so I said, "Oh, my gosh." But anyway, after that happened, then, of course, I had a week to get healed as much as I could, you know, but I still had to pitch the whole World Series on a taped injured ankle, which really bothered me to the point where I retore that muscle.
Despite his injury, the coaches put Law in the starting pitching rotation for the 1960 World Series against the New York Yankees, perhaps the best team in the history of baseball.
This is Pittsburgh, where the Allegheny and Monongahela rivers join to form the Golden Triangle. Pittsburgh, famed for its steel mills and the shimmering glow of its blast furnaces. Pittsburgh that in 1960 gained new distinction, for the Pirates won their first pennant in 33 years. And they faced the same World Series foe they encountered back in 1927, the fabled New York Yankees. The Bombers again are favored as we open that historic Forbes Field that once was the stamping grounds of the immortal Honus Wagner.
The Pirates won the opener 6-4. The Yankees then blew them out 16-3 in Game 2 and another rout 10-0 in Game 3. But the Pirates came back with Law on the mound in Game 4, winning 3-2 and another tight win 5-2 in Game 5. The Yankees took Game 6 12-0, setting up Game 7, what many call one of the greatest World Series games ever played.
The 1960 World Series, the New York Yankees versus the Pittsburgh Pirates. Bobby Richardson leading off. Second base, Tony Kubek. Shortstop, Roger Maris. Right field, Mickey Mantle. Center field, Yogi Berra. Left field, Bill Skowron. First base, John Blanchard doing the catching. And by the way, as you probably have learned by now, and as we learned after the game, Elston Howard, who was hit by a pitched ball, suffered a fracture of the little finger on the throwing hand and, of course, the sideline for today. Clete Boyer is hitting eighth, third base, and Bob Turley pitching.
Takes the Pirates to the field. And if Casey wins this one today, it will be his 8th World Series victory, which will be an all-time series record. He's tied currently at 7 each with Joe McCarthy. So the Bucks are in the field, and we'll set them up defensively for you in a moment. At first base, Rocky Nelson. At second base, Bill Mazeroski. Shortstop, Captain Dick Groth. The third baseman, Don Hook. In left field, back in action after missing all of the series practically, Bob Skinner. The center fielder, Bill Verdon. And the right fielder, Roberto Clemente. Behind the plate, Forrest Smokey Burgess. And on the mound, the Deacon, Vernon Law, who goes after game number 3 and the one that'll do it for the Pirates.
I tell you one thing, I didn't sleep too much that night because I was hoping that Bob Friend could, in that 6th game, could win it for us right there. But he just had a terrible series, and so I knew I was it for the next day. And so every time I'd turn over, I'd go over in my mind how I'm going to pitch to these guys, you know. So it was a pretty rough night, but by the time it was about, I don't know, 6, 7 o'clock in the morning, I was ready to get going, you know. So there was a lot of anxiety, but nothing, I wasn't intimidated. I was just anxious to get the game started, you know, and to get out there and get going.
Good view there of Vern Law, one of the greatest men in baseball. 2-1. Ball 3 inside. 3 balls, 1 strike.
You know, this is a life-changing experience, and you don't want to go out being a loser. And so my concentration was, I've got to pitch well for us. You know, I've got to be, you know, I just can't, I got to keep, I don't pay any attention to what's going on around me at all. You know, and if you did, you know, it could get to you. You know, it really could, because the people, you know, you just are just so full of energy at that point that you want to get there, just start off with a strike, which I did, you know, and just start accepting it just like another ball game.
In the games that needed close decision. Foul on the change. Big motion by the Deacon that time. No balls, 2 strikes. Vern Law is the perfect example of what mothers and fathers thrill over if their sons idolize a baseball player. Ball inside, 1 ball, 2 strikes.
You've got to pitch in that way. So as it turned out, you know, I pitched well enough. I held them down. We scored some runs. And then when I did get into trouble and going into the 7th inning, Murtaugh made a change. And like I say, I had a 5-2 lead. And we're going into the 7th inning, and they get a man on base, and then I run the count on Kubek, you know, 3-2. I threw what I thought was a strike, but the umpire called it a ball. So I walk him, so now they got men on first and second. Well, I guess my manager thought I was losing it. Maybe he could see something, but I know that I found out that I did tear my rotor cuff a little bit, but it wasn't bothering me. And so he comes out and he decides to make a change.
Danny, who is a master at handling men. Don Hope facing you. Danny has great confidence in Vernon Law, as one would, that won 20 games, but more than that, he is a stout-hearted man. Now let's see what Danny, he's going to bring in Roy Face. Casey Stengel in his dugout. Face relieved Law in the 8th inning of the first game. A hand for Law as he leaves. And he's getting a standing ovation.
Because Elroy in the bullpen had done well for us, but he comes in and throws up a 3-run homer, and that ties it up. And they have a 5-run inning. They're 2 runs ahead of us now, you know, but we come back and we score. We have a 5-run inning. And so we got a 2-run lead going into the 9th inning, and Harvey Haddix, well, Bob Friend started, relieved that 9th inning. The first 2 guys he faced got on. So Murtaugh immediately took him out because we had a couple of left-handers come up, brings in Harvey Haddix, and Harvey, before he could get 3 outs, those 2 runs had scored. So now we're all tied up in the 9th inning now. And so now our hitter Mazeroski steps up there, and why Casey Stengel did not bring in the chairman of the board, I don't know. I'm telling you, I don't know why he didn't. But he brought in Ralph Terry instead of Whitey Ford. Whitey Ford, we did nothing against him to speak of. But he chose Ralph Terry. Maybe because the score was tied, I don't know. But anyway, Ralph Terry had, you know, he had good stuff. He was a good pitcher, threw strikes. And the first pitch he threw was just a little bit too high, and Maz took it for a ball, but the next one was down over the plate about so, and that's when he connected.
There's the drive into deep left field. Look out now. That ball is going down. Hits it over the left field fence for a home run, and the Pirates win it 10-9 and win the World Series. The Pittsburgh Pirates are the champions of the world.
Mr. Coach, Dick, I know you're real happy about
I feel wonderful, Bob. This is the greatest ball club in the world.
World's champion, Dick Groat. How's it sound?
Wonderful. It's the greatest feeling in the world to be the world champion. They thought we were dead, but we bounced back, didn't we, Bob?
Yes, you did. Wonderful. Thank you very much, Dick Groat. Let me get Vern Law over here. I want to have Vern Law come over. Tom Johnson, yep. I've got my scorecard.
We had them all the way, didn't we? It was real easy.
This is Tom Johnson, the vice president of the Pittsburgh Ball Club. Tom, I know how happy you are.
Oh, you can see that, Bob. This is a great ball club, and everyone's done a marvelous job all year, and it's great to bring a championship of the world to Pittsburgh.
Well, it certainly is, and here's a guy that pitched his heart out and went as far as his left leg would go, Vern Law. Deacon, I know you were disappointed, but you're happy that you're with a world
You're not kidding, Bob. I'm feeling great right now. You betcha.
Well, I want to congratulate you on your 2 great victories and the way you hung in there and never cried a bit about that left ankle. I know about it.
That's fine, Bob. Thanks.
Vern Law, ladies and gentlemen.
His winning record on the mound was matched only by his winning record in the home. Vern and Vanita's first child, Veldon, was born in 1952. Then Verl, then Vance, then Vaughn and Varlin, and finally, a daughter, Valinda. The dog's name was Victor.
You know, our family was the number 1 priority all the time, and I think that's what indicates that is the effort that he and my mother went through to keep us together. We would travel together with Dad, driving on our way to Fort Myers from Boise, Idaho. It was usually about a 4-day trip, And, you know, back then there was no seatbelt laws or anything, and he'd build a platform in the back of the station wagon where he put luggage underneath, and then he'd pull a trailer with other things for the season. And we would go down for spring training, and when spring training ended and he went north with the ball club, my mother would turn around in that station wagon and drive us all back, oftentimes by herself. And we'd finish school, and then she'd load us up again, and we'd drive to Pittsburgh to stay together for the summer.
Law pitched for the Pirates for 15 years. In 1965, he won the National League Comeback Player of the Year award and finished the season with a 17-9 record. That same year, he also received the Lou Gehrig Award, given to the player who best exhibits character both on and off the field.
Well, what it says on there, that I kind of emulated some of the characteristics of Lou Gehrig both on and off the playing field. And so I guess because I didn't smoke or drink or do those kinds of things, why not too many major league ball players. Some of them have some bad habits, and so maybe I exhibited more than they did as far as receiving a Lou Gehrig Award.
The Law's 5 boys and 1 daughter grew up at major league ballparks.
Then we'd go down and meet him as he's coming out of the clubhouse, and I remember being so proud to be his son and, you know, try to hold on to his hand while the throngs of people would come asking for autographs. And, you know, I was very proud to be the son of a Major League Baseball player, and my dad was very well recognized in Pittsburgh, and he would always stop and sign autographs as we made our way to the car.
Even though his primary focus was on pitching, Vern never lost sight of his job as a father.
You know, he always taught us principles of honesty and obedience. And, you know, a quick story that I'll never forget was when I was shagging during batting practice. In the major leagues, they use real nice baseballs for batting practice also. They don't just use the grass stained balls that get all rough. They're good baseballs. And so baseball players by nature during batting practice are kind of lazy. They don't go and chase every ball. So I was excited as a little kid, and I used to go grab the brand new balls, and every day for a short period of time, I would take these baseballs and put them on the foul line back by the wall. And then as batting practice ended, I'd have 3 or 4 really good balls, and I'd put them in my glove, and I'd go in. And that's one of the advantages of being a player's son, is that I had access to other players, and so I had them sign these baseballs, and then during the ball game I would go up in the stands and sell them and undercut the souvenir stands. You know, they're selling their baseballs for $3.50 and I'd sell mine for $3 or something like that. And so I supplemented my concession income. Instead of a quarter, I all of a sudden had $12 or $15, you know, for a couple of days. And my mother's wondering, how am I coming back to the seats with a pizza or something like that when she knows she's only giving me a quarter? And so I told her that I was, you know, I told her about my little business I had going on. And it lasted only 2, 3, 4 days, something like that. And my dad found out about it, and he just pulled me aside, and he said, "Mom says that you're making some money on the side." And I, you know, as an 8-year-old, I was pretty excited about the kind of money I was making. And he said, "Now I just have one question to ask you." And he said, "Are those your baseballs?" And I started to think, and I said, "Well, no, but you guys have so many, it doesn't really matter." And he said, "No, but did you pay for those baseballs?" And I thought to myself, and I said, "No." And he said, "What do you think is right?" And that's really all he said, you know. And he just made a point that wasn't the right thing to do. And so my business was shut down very quickly. But you know, for 3 or 4 days, it was pretty good money.
It was really an interesting dichotomy, because on one level he was looked up to and admired by so many people, and at the same time you just saw him as your dad. When you were in trouble, he was Dad.
He's a great father. He's really good to the kids.
Vernon Law retired from professional baseball in 1967 when he was 37 years old. He finished with a record of 162 wins and 147 losses, a career earned run average of 3.77. He started 364 games, pitched 2,672 innings, and struck out 1,092 batters. You can take the player out of baseball, but you can't take the baseball out of the player. Immediately after retiring, Law began coaching for the Pirates in the minor leagues. A young lawyer working in Pittsburgh, another Mormon, and a future United States Senator named Orrin Hatch put Law in contact with BYU baseball coach Glenn Tuckett.
Well, Glenn Tuckett was a great human being, one of the great coaches at BYU. And, of course, to have Vernon Law come and teach us pitching, and really not just that, but baseball in particular, was a tremendous blessing to BYU.
I got a phone call from Orrin Hatch, of all people, who was an attorney in Pittsburgh, and he said, how would you like to have Vernon Law as your pitching coach? And I thought, holy smokes, I don't need Vern, I just need someone to talk with on the bus. All of a sudden, here we have a chance to talk with Vernon Law about coming to BYU and being part of our baseball program. And so I met him, that must have been 1968 or something like that. But we've been fraternal ever since, brotherly.
Law coached at BYU for 10 years.
He was a presence. Now here's a guy that spent 20 years in the big leagues and had won the Cy Young Award and was the comeback player of the year and had won 15 games or more 3 or 4 times in the big league. So he brought that aura with him of a big league player, but so humble and so down to earth that you'd never know that he was a major league star. But he brought some class to our program. All of the players really liked Vernon Law. In fact, I don't know how you could dislike Vernon Law, but they all liked him a whole lot. And he was kind of a father figure to many of them, and he added a great deal to our program.
Law was more than a father figure to one of the players. He had a chance to coach his son Vance while at BYU and see him follow in his footsteps into the major leagues, playing for the Pirates and later for the Chicago Cubs.
I remember after my first big league game, we had played the New York Mets, and they weren't very good back then in 1980. My first big league game was against them, and I got my first hit, and after the ball game, we beat them pretty well. And I'm sitting in my locker, and I see a pair of shoes stand right in front of me, and I look up, and it's a former teammate of my dad who is now our pitching coach by the name of Harvey Haddix. And he looks down and he has a beer in his hand and holds it out and says, "Here, have a beer. Congratulations on your first big league game." And I looked up at Harvey and I said, "Harvey, you know I don't drink." And he goes, "I'm just checking." So obviously my dad had set the tone, and I knew that, that there were expectations, and wanted to see if the apple fell too far from the tree, and I hope that it did not.
Law coached for 2 years in Japan, 5 years in Denver for the White Sox, and then finished his coaching career at Provo High School. Other than his 2-year stint in the Army, Law played or coached baseball consecutively for 63 years.
Try to turn it around a little bit.
At age 85, Vernon Law goes to the field every day except Sunday and pitches batting practice to his grandson Adam, who is now playing minor league ball in the Los Angeles Dodgers organization.
What is it about your grandpa that inspires you the most?
Probably his will to win. I mean, that guy, he won't play paper football, the little paper game that you flick. He won't play that because there's a chance that I might beat him. Like, the guy is unbelievably competitive that he won't play certain games because there's a good chance that he'll lose. And to have that go, how he acts, how he goes about his business is always a game. When he drives, it's a game. Like, he's trying to beat somebody else. And
it gets a little scary at times, but like, I mean, you have to have that inner desire to win, and that really inspires me to push myself to be a better player, to be a better person, and then to help my team win.
Vernon Law is credited to have coined the phrase, "A winner never quits, and a quitter never wins." But in addition to hard work and baseball, the Deacon also passed on his commitment to living a Christ-centered life.
Honestly, it puts a little pressure on me because you still come across, I mean, we had a fan in this past season that I played at in Tulsa, Oklahoma that had seen my grandfather pitch in the 1960 World Series. He was like 12 years old, and of course, he's a member of the church, and so it puts pressure on me knowing that the great example that my grandfather and my father set, I have a role to fill, and that's something that I need to be able to stick to and be an example of what we stand for and of what they've really paved the way for a lot of LDS athletes.
Dale Murphy, two-time National League MVP, converted to the Mormon Church just as he started his professional baseball career. But the legacy set by Vern Law followed him.
And I was invited to spring training to Major League Camp with the Braves because I was a catcher. And even at a young age, and a young player and a brand new convert to the LDS Church. And I remember specifically, I was at the hotel lobby after a workout, and I'm doing something down in the lobby, and I walk by the bar, and I hear someone say, "Murphy, come in here," and I can't see who it is. And I'm looking in there, and I'm thinking, I don't want to go in this bar. I don't know what's going on. And Murphy, I hear this again, "Murphy, come in here," and then I was like, yeah, okay. I just kind of waved and said, "See you later." And then I heard this big laugh, and one of our minor league pitching coaches comes out, and it's Bob Veal. Bob Veal was a teammate of Vern's with the Pittsburgh Pirates, and he was laughing at me. He said, he goes, "I knew you wouldn't come in the bar, Murph, because I played with Vern, and I know Vern didn't go in bars either." And I was like, okay, that's really nice. But and funny, and he had a good chuckle about it. But to me, I was like, Vern had an impact on people and set a great example for all of us. And that's what I wanted to do with my career, was have an impact on people. And by, living my faith and respecting others, but also, letting people know I was serious about it. And Vern did that and set that example for all of us.
Law's basement is a treasure trove of baseball history. His Lou Gehrig Award, his 1960 Cy Young Award, bats, gloves, and jerseys he used, and hundreds of baseballs signed by various Hall of Famers.
Darn, I've got one signed by Don Larson, who pitched, the perfect game in the World Series. Yeah, this is the Yogi Berra here. Here's Harmon Killebrew just above him, an Idaho boy that we did a lot of speaking engagements with.
As he looks at these walls, it brings back memories of baseball legends he once called opponents and also called friends.
But as far as the pitcher's concerned, Sandy Koufax is one that I had a lot of respect for. I pitched against Sandy a lot of times, and he's a real gentleman too, and he practiced his faith as well. He wouldn't pitch on Jan Kipper. That was a no-no. And so anyway, Sandy was all I can say, he's a friend, good friend, so.
But Vernon Law lives in the present, not in the past. His days in baseball are behind him, but his days with his family go on forever.
I don't come down here and sit and look around and see what I've done. I don't do that, There's some guys will live in their past, and say, think, "Oh, geez, this is so good, so great." there's the Yankee infield up there that I beat. Or look at there, I'm on Sports Illustrated 1960 when it was 25 cents a copy. There are people that glory in those kinds of things, and it doesn't make that much difference to me. Matter of fact, I'd like to get rid of all of this stuff. I really would. It doesn't mean anything to me now. People, most people know, that I played baseball and I had a successful career. That's good enough. I don't have to stand out there and pound my chest like so many guys today and drawing attention to what I've done. It doesn't amount to a hill of beans now. That's all in the past, and so the things that I'm more proud about really today are my grandkids, my family. Those are the things that really matter. So those things I can dwell on, not what you see here. So.
While Vernon Law is no longer on the mound, his family and friends say he remains in the game, inspiring them to win in what matters most.
Here was a guy that could play professional baseball at the highest level and keep his family first and keep his family intact. And that's not always an easy thing to do if you're in professional sports or athletics, the entertainment industry in general. And again, here's a early pioneer that is playing competitive baseball at the highest levels, but has a great family. And that was the priority in his life. And everybody knew that. And that was a great example to me.
Oh, he's genuine. Genuine. And I don't like that trite phrase about what you see is what you get, but he's genuine. He's the real thing. Vernon Law is as nice a man as there is on the earth. I think I just have great respect for Vern Law.
He's one of the people who you could rely on to do his best no matter what he was doing, and who's always been a friend. To this day, Vernon and I are very close friends, and he plays in my charitable golf tournament and comes to various meetings that we have and so forth. He's just a terrific human being. He's like an elder brother that anybody would kill to have.
He's a disciple of Jesus Christ, and that was always front and center of his baseball career.
How important his family and the gospel is to him. And I think those go hand in hand. I think how hard you work and your dedication to becoming the best that you can be transfers over into who you are as a member of the church. You're always trying to succeed. You're always trying to make yourself a little bit better every day. And I would say that is the main thing that my dad has always promoted and has tried to exemplify, is how much the church meant to him and how much his family means to him.
He was a heck of a father. No. Proud to be his son.
He's a good man. He does not swear, and he looks for it to be helpful, not only to me, but to others. And he loves the gospel. That's been very, very helpful, I know, in our home. So prayers are said, and it gives you a lot of comfort, especially when I was alone so much. That's really, he has been the example.
It's everything, and I've told my kids, they're getting some age on themselves and with their families and so forth. And I say there's ups and there's downs, but let me tell you, after it's all said and done, it's worth it. because there's nothing better, nothing can take the place of family, you know, and my kids know that I love them, that I wish success for them, and will do anything, really, literally anything to help them to achieve their goals as well as I would my own goals, you know. Family is the most important thing in my life.